Hello, my name's Andy and welcome to the garage. I've just dug out from the loft, as you can see, a case which itself dates from the late 60s. I think it was my dad's. He gave it to me, I've had it ever since, and inside is part of my die cast collection that I haven't shown yet. It's quite an unusual die cast collection as well, a bit off the beaten track. So without further ado, let's get the case opened and take a look. And there's a clue. War Games Rules, 1950 to 75. There's a map. So I'll just spread the map out and it'll make the background look a bit more interesting, I hope. So this is what kids were doing, war gaming, mid to late 70s. Now I've tried to get one of each type out. We've got the Russians here on our right. We've got the Allies, and we play against those rules. Measuring, throwing dice, percentage dice like that, on a much bigger table than this, obviously, maybe 3 meters by 3 meters. The Russians would have a lot more. I think we were in the Cold War, the NATO were outnumbered 5 to 1 in tanks, maybe more. Well, the main battle tank of the British Army at that time was the Chieftain. I think 122mm gun, AA class armour on our Chieftains as it was then. Let's just bring one for a little closer look. Depending who you bought them off, decided on the quality of the casting. This was the best company. This, I can tell this was made by Ross Heroics, I think a company in Leicestershire. Sorry I'm moving about there. There we go, that's that one. So we'd have some of those. The markings were just to say who they belonged to, not military markings. Obviously the painting is very crude. Then in support you'd have your light armoured infantry. And these would be based on the FV432 personnel carrier. You can see we've got one there with some missiles, probably anti-tank missiles. We've got a 37mm cannon there on that one. This looks like a troop carrier. Just over here we'd have like a thing to detect where mortars were coming from. Can't remember what it was called. So we'd have a lot of supporting vehicles, and as you can see we'd have a bit of infantry lying around, hiding. You wouldn't necessarily put your troops on the map because they'd be hidden. That one. There we have a Milan anti-tank crew hiding. If we move up a bit, we'd have some transport. Here we've got a couple of stalwarts, amphibious British carriers. Going back over here, we'd have some jeeps. Like a US Jeep, that looks like a Land Rover, that particular one. We'd have some air defence. So here we have a tracked Rapier, which was an export model. The British Army never had that. They had this control unit with the Rapier as standalone, towed by jeeps like that to get around on. Then you come into your artillery, because what we'd fight, we just wouldn't fight battles, we'd fight whole campaigns. So here we have an Honest John tactical nuclear missile of the US Army. That's actually a Soviet ASU-85. That's got on the wrong side, so we'll move that to the other side for later. Then we'd have some artillery. I think these are American 152mm guns. M1970 152mm guns. There's another tracked rapier. You might have some tractor units going about. A few more jeeps perhaps. You might have a staff car, World War II era, if you was getting a bit eccentric. And of course you'd have all these buildings lying around. You might have a bit of lichen, whatever, to hide things. Then, depending how you was, you may have a tank hulled down, so its armour would increase in its defence. And that's basically sort of allied armour you might have. You'd have different fighting vehicles, obviously. Some of these would be air defence, rocket firing, reconnaissance vehicles, etc. So I hope that gives you a flavour of what kids were doing if they were fighting for the Allies, NATO. So let's go and look at the Russian side. In this case, we've got our Russians coming off the beach, and the lead battle tank of the Russians at the time was the T-72. Not as good as we were led to believe as the British Chieftain. There's a T-72, so you can see the size of my fingers there, how big they are. I think each of these is just over a centimetre square. They in support would have their own artillery, just like the Allies did. So there's the M1970 152. This is an ASU 85, which was an airborne artillery piece that could be flown in Antonovs. I'm not sure if it could be parachuted out the back door or not, but you certainly needed some artillery. Then you may have some, what would you call them, mechanised infantry vehicles, engineers' vehicles. So these are based on a BTR 50, and I think if I just get one of these up, you can see the difference in the casting qualities. This is how they all came. They all came in this alloy colour. You may have the odd vehicle, truck. Somebody's homemade that one. That wasn't mine originally, I don't think. I swapped some. You may have a landing vehicle with what is a BTR or a BRM on this one. If I just bring that a bit closer, see that's like a rocket launcher. Tracked, half-track type vehicle. In support you'd have the Russian light tank PT-76, which in theory could go through water. This bridge is metal, so you may have a bridge, obviously probably not on the beach, but where else do I put it? Let's just zoom in on a few more here. There's an SA-2 SAM missile, because I'll be going over the aircraft and the ships later. It's not just the armour. Then you'd have still a formidable anti-aircraft system, the ZSU-234. This is a tracked SA-9 or SA-6, and there's two more SU-234s. So I hope you can see the different quality in those. I'll just put them on my hand. Yeah, I'll put those 234s on my hand, and you can see the difference in the quality of where you got them from. Around that time, something like this would be maybe 30 pence, 35 pence. We had gone decimal then, by the way. And of course, the Russian side would have their tactical nuclear weapons, and this is a Frog 7 type of thing you used to see paraded down Red Square when they have that military day. And then you'd have all the Russian light infantry vehicles based on BRDMs or BTRs. So light armoured vehicles with rockets, cannon, rockets, just personnel carriers, rockets again. And then you'd have like tanks, PT-76s again, or BRDMs. These ones had the turret moulded. Some of the better ones, as you can see, didn't have the turret moulded. That is the wrong turret for that one. So back in the day, quite interesting. Then now and again, because we didn't just fight modern, we might have some Second World War stuff. So you'd have, which may still be going along in what were then some of the Soviet satellite states. Let me just bring those down to here. So these are like half-tracked rocket launchers. And then you'd probably, and this is how sometimes it got crazy, somebody would have bought a German Big Bertha mortar on a railway wagon, and suddenly that might come into play. So that's the ground forces. I hope you liked that. Just a quick overview. I'll just zoom out and we'll be able to see a bit more again. I think what we'll do next is go on to the air forces. Right, let's take a look at our air forces, those mid-70s to 80s war games. So probably the best fighter of its time, certainly the best naval fighter, the F-14 Tomcat swing wing, made famous to everyone by the first Top Gun series, and it did take first Top Gun film rather, and was in the second Top Gun film, employed by the US Navy and the Iranian Navy. Iranian Air Force Navy had some too. So that's that. Then light attack aircraft, Douglas A4 Skyhawk, main attack aircraft of that era probably of the Navy, US Navy, though they had A7 Corsairs, they had A6 Intruders, they still had Sky Raiders, piston engine ones. And they also had the F4 Phantom, McDonnell Douglas Phantom, employed by a lot of Allied air forces, Germany, Great Britain, the Americans, US Navy and US Air Force. Towards the early 80s, NATO in Europe certainly employed the MRCA, multi-role combat aircraft, subsequently named the Tornado. Here's an example. Swing wing again. Maybe the best ground fighter of its day, the F-15 Eagle. I don't think one's ever been shot down in combat. Used by the Japanese Air Force, Israeli Air Force and the US Air Force. And subsequently, as well as being an air defence fighter, it became a ground attack F-15 Strike Eagle. Then close air support, British Air Force, Royal Air Force, Harrier, jump jet, also employed by the US Marines, Spanish Navy and Indian Navy. And of course, for a lot of people, famous for its role in the Falklands conflict, mainly against the A4 Skyhawk. Employed by the Swedish Air Force, the Draken, supersonic, delta-winged interceptor. The RAF in the mid-70s was still flying BAC Lightnings, Mach 2 fighters with a tremendous climb rate. I think equal if not close to the F-15 Eagle we've just looked at. what you might get bobbing about now and again in some of the older Allied Air Forces, like this F-86 Sabre, one of my favourite planes, just for the shape of it. Just to give you a comparison, we've got a RAF Lancaster there in maritime colours. Certainly the Lancaster that is still flying with a British Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial flight, I think is an ex-French Lancaster which had a naval role, and I know this one had a campaign role as a maritime reconnaissance. Some nice detailing underneath there. Undercarriage is right for once, not like some of these modern corgis. Then we'd have our helicopters and stuff. So there's a Chinook. Now I don't remember getting any rotor blades with it, and I certainly can't find any. With the Chinook, you may have air sea rescue or commando carrying Seeking helicopter here. I think Sikorsky 53, 55, don't quote me on that, could be as high as 60. Then on the Russian side, the red side, the MiG-25 Foxbat, reputedly capable of Mach 3, but its engine life was limited, and obviously at that speed it couldn't maintain that for long. And I think that was partly why the US Navy had the Tomcat, which had a Phoenix missile which could intercept an aircraft at speeds of over Mach 3 and over 100 miles away, so fleet defence. Then we've got a MiG-23. Not sure if that was called Flogger. Got an Su-7. Close air support. And then, because I've just glued the tail back on, we've got an A-10 Thunderbolt 2, sometimes called the Warthog. And you can just see the detail there, if I get that in focus. Cannon at the front, 7-barreled Gatling cannon, firing depleted uranium shells. Close air support, and you still see these flying around today in the news. MiL-24 Hind attack helicopter with the weapons underneath those stubby wings there, you can see. Let's try, there we are, just in and out of focus. Still flying today. And on the Allies side, we'd have the UE Cobra. Tail rope is missing on this one, and that was purely a helicopter designed to attack the Russian army as it made its way into Western Europe, firing anti-tank missiles under those stubby wings. So that was the Air Force I'd have been flying in the day. Pretty varied, interesting. Hope you enjoyed that overview. What we'll now do is move on to the navies. I almost forgot about these. They're in a separate box by themselves. I'm sure they need no introduction to people. The Avro Vulcan, still flying in the 70s. Flying at low level. There he has the Vulcan 2. Well, it's the B Mark 2 actually. I've lost a bit of the undercarriage on that one. But there we go. Not a bad die-cast model for the size of it. Not a lot of detail obviously, but these were more functional pieces. They weren't supposed to be display pieces. Yeah, I've lost the front wheel on that one as well in undercarriage. And being a big Vulcan fan and living near RAF Scampton as a kid and still do, it's quite obvious that you'd have to have a Vulcan and you'd have to have a Lightning in your fleet from RAF Binbrook as well. Incidentally, there you can see the bomb aimer's position, the step ladder to get in would be just in front of this front undercarriage. There'd be a probe out of here, and of course, as we've discussed earlier, another plane involved in the Falklands conflict, and when it dropped the bombs on Port Stanley Airport, that was the longest bombing mission in history at that time. So there we have the Royal Air Force Vulcan. And here we are with the navies. We didn't fight many naval battles, but we did have campaigns, and you'd need some sort of navy. So here we have an Iowa class, USS Iowa. Just let you read that there. Still being used into the 1990s, the early 90s, I think. Huge, huge guns at the front. You can even see them on the model here. And they'd be, firing terrific distances, I don't know, 40 miles maybe. Quite detailed models, but remember, this was a big ship. This was 45,000 tons standard and could move at 33 knots. And had 3 aircraft in there somewhere. Of course, if you've got Tomcats, like we've just seen, you'd need an aircraft carrier. And what better to have in your fleet than the USS Enterprise? You got these handy little stickers when you got them, little bits of paper typed out, as you can probably see. 75,000 tons, 80 to 100 helicopters, the F-14, the F-4. We mentioned the A6 and A7, E2C Hawkeye, that's the twin prop airborne early warning. And if you didn't have the budget for the Enterprise, you might have an Essex class Second World War type aircraft carrier, 1942 there you see. So here we have another ship of the era, Type 42 destroyer, HMS Sheffield, sunk by an Exocet missile in the Falklands conflict, fired from a Super Étendard fighter jet. You can see it had a Sea Dart, torpedoes, a gun at the front, which you can see just there, and a Lynx helicopter. And the Argentinians had 2 of those. Some people say the sinking of the General Belgrano by a British submarine, which could have been one of these, kept them in port. Who knows? Not for us to debate. Then I'm not sure what this is. This looks Second World War to me, and I'm thinking it may be this one, the Ramillies. Doesn't look too big, actually launched in 1916. Not quite sure on that. Then we move on to the Russian fleet. This has nothing underneath it. It doesn't look the same as these two. These two are, let's just put them on my hand for you to have a look at. Caching class. Don't know what you call them. Certainly got missiles, etc. Look sort of frigate destroyer size. If we put the Sheffield next to them, you can see they're of a similar size, so they're probably destroyers. That's Type 42 frigate destroyer. Then I do know what this one was. This was a Moskva. It's not got its name, but it was a big helicopter carrier of its day. I'm sure this is some sort of Russian missile launcher, etc. nothing on the bottom. So that was the Navy. I hope you liked that quick overview. Fortunately, we still got the pieces of paper with what they were, most of them on. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. It's a bit different to what I normally do, but I've spoken to a few people about it and they said they'd be interested in seeing it. So please like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll be back to you with some more normal vehicle truck restorations in the near future. Thank you for watching. Bye for now. Take care.